Again, I've moved location back to my office. It's slightly dull Sunday out there. It was my birthday yesterday, so just ate food and drank. So let's do another video. So this is one of my all-time favourite bands. I think, if I'm honest with myself, when I was growing up, getting into music in 1985, 86, 87, this band were possibly the most influential band on my sort of formative years. And now when I'm making music of my own, their style of riffs and songwriting and melodies often rear their head, I think. So I first heard about them in Kerrang back in 1982, in the early days of Kerrang magazine, and there's an advert and a review for the album Breaking the Chains, which was by the band Dokken, of course. If you actually look on the spine of the original vinyl, which I used to have for Breaking the Chains, it actually says Don Dokken on the vinyl. And then it's got a picture of him kind of chained up but coloured in on the back. So there was a sort of grey area. Is Dokken a band? Is it a solo project? So I actually got the original Carrere vinyl after I got into the band. So what's interesting about that is how much rawer it is and compared to this. So this is the 1983 reissue of Breaking the Chains. I think it might have been called Breaking the Chain or Break In, the original one. So the difference with this is remixed by Michael Wagner. So Michael Wagner, I think he's did some engineering on the Carrere one. Maybe Dear to Dirks produces it. I'm not sure because I don't have a hand. I sold it for like 20 quid. It was reasonably rare. So basically what they do is Michael Wagner remixes it. They have a different version of the track Paris is Burning. And that comes on the end of the album. And there's a song called Live to Rock. Now, on the original vinyl, that's called We're Illegal. So just going through the tracks, and I'll compare and contrast with the original 1981-82 Breaking the Chains and the 83 remix. On the Breaking the Chains original one, Juan Crucier plays bass, I think. And on the back of the vinyl of the reissue, he's pictured on the back. So Juan Crucier obviously went on to Rat. On the back of this Rock Candy remaster here is a picture of Jeff Pilson, and probably by the time that album came out, the remix, I would suspect Jeff Pilson was in the band by then. Mick Brown was still on drums, and of course George Lynch on guitar right from the start. He was basically flown over to Germany to do the album. Don Dokken knew him from the LA band scene. So the track Breaking the Chains, Carrere version, remix version, virtually the same. Obviously the sound of the original Carrere one, it's a lot kind of rawer, it's kind of duller. Basically this mix, the remix sounds brighter, and it's kind of more open sounding. A lot of people prefer the original mix, I think. Then you got In the Middle and Felony. In the Middle's a really good track. Felony, kind of, pretty bad lyric in today's climate. Some interesting George Lynch solos on those tracks. Then there's I Can't See You, which is a poppy track. Again, doesn't really sound any different apart from the mix on the two versions. So Live to Rock, Rock to Live on the 1983 version. Again, originally it's called We're Illegal on the original one. And I actually think the Live to Rock, Rock to Live works better. And it's the original We're Illegal track, as it was called, didn't really have a standout solo. The solo that George Lynch redid for Live to Rock, Rock to Live kind of hints at where things are maybe going to head. He does a face melter. Obviously, we will be talking about George Lynch in more detail. I'll kind of summarise where he's at the end of this section. Then you've got the track Night Rider, one of my favourite riffs to play. It's one of my favourite tracks on the album. Again, 82 version, 83 versions, not a lot of difference. Same vocal, cool little Lynch solo, quite an atmospheric track with a nice double kick pattern. Then another favourite track of the album, Seven Thunders. Good harmonies on the chorus on this, interesting riff. Good Lynch solo. Then you got Young Girls, another cheesy lyric, and Stick to Your Guns. I'm not as fussed about these tracks, they're kind of very poppy. So that's quite interesting in this album. Obviously a lot of hair metal has a poppy element. It's commercial, but it's not poppy, whereas the track I Can't See, Young Girls and Stick to Your Guns are quite poppy. So the original Paris is Burning was really cool on the original mix and had a really good Lynch solo. He does some cool pentatonic stuff. But by the time they do the remix, his soloing's evolved, and this opens with a stunning solo spot, which brings out a lot of classic Lynch things like his vibrato style. The way, obviously I'm going into guitar speak here, but the way he uses the flat five of the blues scale, which is very distinctive. And he also does this great arpeggio thing, which I never got down, where he kind of does a muted thing and slides down. So and then the solo's awesome in the middle. So yeah, so this album, Breaking the Chains, going off the original version, that showed loads of promise. It was a good record. I would say the remix, although it's more polished the mix and some people don't like that, I would say the improvements on the tracks make it better. It's a solid debut. I think it can be a problem when bands' debut albums are too good because they've got nowhere to go. There's enough on here to maybe go, I'll check out the next Dokken album. It's not a classic. The title track, Breaking the Chains, and Paris is Burning, and the two tracks are still play live when they do play live in whatever incarnation. And Night Rider's really good in the middle. It's a good track, Seven Thunders. George Lynch's soloing was enough to get him noticed in Kerrang at the time. Basically, he was kind of compared to Eddie Van Halen, Randy Rhoads. So I would say at this point he's playing quite a bit. It's off that standard. It's not there yet. Randy Rhoads and Eddie Van Halen, of course, would still be in the very early 80s when the original Breaking the Chains came out, would still be the premier American hard rock guitarists. And mostly when Breaking the Chains came out, I think, can't remember the month, but shortly after that, Randy Rhoads passed away. George Lynch, did he originally audition for Ozzy? I think he may have done. Don't quote me, I should know this because it's all folklore. But he certainly, I think he maybe went back and auditioned again after Randy Rhoads passed, and after Brad Gillis had left and gone back to Night Ranger. What would a George Lynch been like for Ozzy? I don't know. I think his rhythm style and his lead style would work. His rhythm style, some elements, but he's one of those players I don't think it would be quite the right fit for him, and that's probably why Ozzy was like, oh, this guy's great, but it's just not quite right for my sound. Okay, so Breaking the Chains gets him out of the traps. He gets well received. The video gets MTV airplay. But my first experience of Dokken was their Tooth and Nail album from 1984. Again, it's back to front as usual. Classic album cover that, I love it. So I tell you a little tale about this album. Basically, I'd heard the track Alone Again on the Friday Rock Show, which we liked. My brother and I used to listen to that. It's my older brother. And one day he came back, I came home from school, and he'd been out to Lancaster, which is a city nearby to where we lived. And he'd gone to Ear Records, which is the little shop there. And he'd got this in the bargain bin. Not massive bargain, but it was $2.99, so I had a bit of money knocked off. And so we put it on, and pretty much it was kind of one of those life-changing moments for me. Was basically with the track Tooth and Nail came in, and we heard the solo, and pretty much the second the solo finished, we turned to each other at the same time. We said, "Good solo." Pretty much from there on in, George Lynch was right on my radar, and was going to become my favourite all-time player. The other thing about this, shortly before this came out, there was a kind of thing in Kerrang where they had what was happening, what bands were working on what albums, and there was a picture of Lynch with his Tiger Stripe guitar, looking all suntanned, looking LA as he does. And it just said that Don Dokken said, Lynch's solos, he was really smoking. And I just remember seeing the picture and this quote, really smoking. And it's weird, you get a feeling about things back then. You saw a picture of a guitarist, and, some guitarists just look like, that guy looks like he might know what he's doing, So when Lynch, when we got this album, there was a sense of anticipation that this guy was going to be a great player. The picture on the back of the band, I think looks really cool. You see that, and Lynch, he looks so cool. I love his hair. I know it's pathetic, but I loved his haircut. I just loved his whole look. That's how a guitar hero should look, and he plays like a guitar hero and writes like a guitar hero. There's not a lot of that around now, in my opinion. But anyway, that's a whole other subject. So what's this album like? I think listening to it now, for songs, I think this is their most consistent album. I think there's not a bad track on this. It's got Without Warning, Little Instrumental, Tooth and Nail, classic, Just Got Lucky, classic. One of my favourite deep cuts, Heartless Heart, really good vocal by Dokken, great hook. Interestingly enough, doesn't have a solo on it. Then you got Don't Close Your Eyes, another really good deep cut, top F sharp riff, really good. That's side one, just really solid. Then side two opens with a classic, When Heaven Comes Down. This is the first time when we hear George Lynch's famous tritone. Again, guitarists will know what I mean. It's basically I've got a fifth and then he just moves it down a fret to the flat fifth. So many riffs, some of these great riffs use that idea. Cool solo on that. Then Into the Fire, another album classic, they play it live. Fantastic solo by George, does the Van Halen Spanish Fly type of lick, moving up the B and high E, beautiful. Then in Bullets to Spare. Now this used to be a track I wasn't fussed with, but I think it's really good. It's a really good fun track. Alone Again, and then great power ballad. Dokken did that really well. Great vocal by Don. And Turn on the Action finishes it off, which is a great riff that appears on their Beast in the East album and has a great introduction from Don. This album went platinum eventually. I think it's a classic album of its time. I think what the other albums improve on is the production. This is produced by Tom Werman, who had really good track record with Ted Nugent, Motley Crue, stuff like that. It's quite heavy, it's very raw in places. It just lacks a bit of definition for me on George's sound. And again, George at this point, he still hasn't developed fully. What's fascinating about this comes out in 1984, that's the year he turns 30. By this point, a lot of players say like Van Halen's already peaked in a way with 1984 at the age of 29. Michael Schenker's already had loads of albums out. And things like that. So George Lynch, he took a long time to arrive, and this was the beginning of his arrival. So Tooth and Nail, one of me all-time, it's one of my great albums. The next one is another story with this. This came out on import in late 85 in America. You couldn't get a copy of it. It got reviewed in Kerrang. It was received pretty well, but Kerrang were always a bit flat on Dokken. They weren't always fans of him, which kind of annoyed me. So back early 86, I went to Record Shack when I flicked through the rack and then I went past it. I didn't realise, because on the front they don't really look, I didn't see the logo at the top and they don't really look anything like Dokken because they're in all this glammy gear. Same thing will come with the costumes. And then I flicked back through the albums and I realised, oh God, it's under lock and key. And it was on German import and it was £7.99. Now that's a lot of paper round money. That was like 2-3 weeks paper round money then. I used to deliver the Lakeland Echo, or the Lakes Leaders, it was later called, which is a free paper around my village where I lived. Sorry, scratching my ear, in Cumbria. Interesting enough, you got more money, when you got leaflets. So I did quite well there. It was a good paper round. I didn't have to get up early for it. I just did it a couple of nights a week. Anyway, I'm digressing. I had to have it. So I bought Under Lock and Key on vinyl. I remember it was probably a wet day, grim day. Got home, basically put on the album. That was life-changing for me. The sound, the production by Neil Kernan, the mix. I think Michael Wagner mixed this album. Produced by both British. Yeah, it was Neil Kernan and Michael Wagner, joint production. They're great with guitars. A lot more definition on Mick Brown and Jeff Pilson's bass. I think George's guitar sound on this was never better. Basically, it's him just plugged into some really good Marshalls, maybe with something like a Tube Screamer, you never know. His rhythm sounds really tight, it's got punch, and his lead sounds like really bright and zingy, but it's fat. The songs, let's just go through them. This is a Rock Candy remaster. If you haven't got this, get a copy. It sounds fantastic on a big system. Unchained the Night classic, fantastic. 2 fantastic Lynch solos on this. Great vocal by Don. Opens up with that fantastic riff, comes in, awesome. Then you got The Hunter, which is my favourite George Lynch solo of all time. Just great track. Again, really good hooks. Great backing vocals by Jeff Pilson. Solo is just a masterpiece of melodic construction, everything in the right place, D minor, saddest of all keys. It just shows off Lynch's great intonation on his bends. You hear him use his jerk-off vibrato, although I thought it was a whammy bar originally. And it's got a fantastic ending. He executes like a high bend at the 22nd fret, bending up 3 frets, perfectly pitched, perfectly vibrato, masterpiece. In My Dreams, probably the album's most well-known track, a single for the band. Again, brilliant Lynch solo, brilliant song. Then you've got probably the album's weakest cut for me, Slipping Away. This was kind of forced on the band a bit, I think, to do a ballad. But it's a pleasant enough track, lovely Lynch solo, great touch on it. Side 1 finishes with lightning strikes again. When I originally first listened to the vinyl on this, I actually took the needle at the end of the solo and put it back and listened to I didn't finish side 1, I had to listen to the solo again. So Lynch does this call and response thing. So basically he has one part of the solo in one side of the stereo spectrum, and then he plays against himself, does a response in the other. He does lots of clever whammy bar dives and finishes each. He has a conversation. It's phenomenal, great F-sharp riff. Basically already on side 1, George Lynch has achieved something in the history of guitar, in my opinion. Side 2 opens another classic, It's Not Love. Boring You, it's another fantastic Lynch solo. It's a great Dokken song. He hits a pinch harmonic zinger at the 22nd fret on the B string. I mean, that's really hard to execute, and he does a 3 fret bend. His execution is absolutely phenomenal, and then he does like a brilliant sort of Malmsteen pivot lick, puts his own spin on it, and a slippery tapping run that I still can't work out. Fantastic. Then they've got another ballad, Jaded Heart. Again, I like this track, probably not as much. I prefer it to Slipping Away, but it is a good track. Great solo again. Then Don't Lie to Me, really good melodic rocker, showing their Scorpions influence. I should say, like, Dokken's USP was like they had the LA metal sound, but they had a lot of European influence. Obviously Lynch's got a lot of Michael Schenker in his playing. Dokken had worked in Germany, and he'd done backing vocals for the Scorpions and done the scratch tracks for Blackout when Klaus Meine had ill throat problems. So they always had that slightly different element to their sound. So Don't Lie to Me's got a lovely solo. I think Nick Bocott, later that year, there was a George Lynch featuring guitarist, and Nick Bocott transcribed that lick, a little run he does on Don't Lie to Me. I'll just finish the album, I'll talk about the guitarist thing. Then there's Will the Sunrise, is one of my favourite albums, deep cuts. Great solo, great hook, really good. And then it finishes with Till the Living End, which is a fast up-tempo rocker. Yeah, I really like this track. I maybe don't like it quite as much as I used to. The solo's awesome. So I don't think this album's consistent with the songs as Two for Now, but what it has is some of their greatest songs, and it's better production. So it's a tough one for me. This is the one, I'll probably put in my top 10 albums of all time, and I'd probably say this is their definitive album. It went platinum in America. So yeah, George Lynch really arrived on the map as a guitarist for this. The guitarist feature, he's featured on the front in the corner. Adrian Smith was the front cover. Nick Bocott basically said what, people who'd been checking him out were thinking, this guy's got fantastic vibrato, he's got great melody, he's got something different about his playing that sets him apart from other players. So yeah, Dokken started to do really well. That's a rock candy again. And then they get bigger, and then they do this album. The Back for the Attack album comes out in November 87, I think. So by then we're well into the CD era. Def Leppard have done Hysterium and put 12 tracks on, over 60 minutes of music. So this has 13 tracks, and it's a long album. It's over 60 minutes. This actually has a bonus track, Back for the Attack, the title track, and that was the B-side of the Dream Warriors EP single. For the Nightmare on Elm Street film. So the track Dream Warriors came out prior to that. In actual fact, the Dream Warriors track has a different solo, and certainly a different outro solo to the one here. So Neil Kernan comes back as producer, but Steve Thompson and Michael Barbiero mix this, and later on they mix Justice for All, I think, by Metallica. And they also produce Tesla. Yeah, they do Mechanical Resonance and Great Radio Controversy. Not sure if they do Psychotic Supper. I think they do, but correct me on that. So this album, when I first got this, obviously I was like massively excited. By this point, I mean, George Lynch is my favourite player, along with Malmsteen, Steve Vai, that time. So when Kiss of Death came out of the speakers, I was a bit taken aback how by scratchy the guitar was. But it does have a different sound, and it took us a little more getting into, but it's another great record. You got Kiss of Death, classic, Prisoner, good track, more of a filler track than Night by Night. The guitar playing on this is just after the first chorus, George Lynch does a kind of pre second verse bit of lead, and just that in itself is amazing. The solo is incredible. Does a lot of multi-tracking on this, George, and there's quite a lot of harmonies. There's a lot of guitar on this album. I think that's by then there's probably a bit of conflict with Don Dokken. Basically, George Lynch's reputation's going up, and guitar fans are big part, I think, of the audience that buys Dokken albums. So a lot of George. Standing in the Shadows, another classic Dokken track. Heaven Sent, one of the other great Lynch guitar solos, probably up there, my third favourite solo he's ever done. I can't really describe what he does on this. Allegedly he was a bit drunk when he did it, but it just kind of it's just great guitar playing. Then he does his instrumental, Mr. Scary. Didn't quite like this at first. I guess I thought he was kind of jumping on the Shrapnel bandwagon a bit. But I realised later on it was just he was getting he's putting his own spin on things and finding his way, and it's a classic, another classic track. Side 2 of the original vinyl, Open With So Many Tears, not fussed with that track. Burning Like a Flame, that was a single. I like that more now, but I wasn't as fussed with that at the time. Lost Behind the Wall, that's a track I really like, another cool solo, quite atmospheric. Stop Fighting Love, not as fussed with the track, brilliant solo in that, like George hits a zinger, a pinch harmonic, and in the mix, they open it up with some lovely delay, and sounds great. Cry the Gypsy, yeah, great track. I've got a mate, that's his favourite George solo. He does some great feedback in that, and that's great. Sleepless Nights, next track, that's great. Lovely solo, and then it finishes with Dream Warriors, pardon me, which is obviously the album's probably well-known track to people who don't like Dokken. Another great track. So I think Unlock and Key and Tooth and Nail I prefer, but then again, this album is a lot of people's favourite Dokken albums. I wouldn't dispute that. These albums, they're all 9 out of 10 albums, So after that, the band basically starts to fall apart. George Lynch and Don Dokken don't get on. They basically get paid a handsome fee to go to Japan and make Beast from the East, the live album. And this is one of the very few live albums after the sort of final peak of live albums with Live After Death by Iron Maiden. You don't get many live albums, but I think this is a pretty good one. Captures the band in full flow. George Lynch goes off kind of track with some of his solos. He does some different things. He has a solo spot which is really cool, and he's got a studio track called Walk Away on the end, which is really good. So what happens is, at this point, they go their separate ways, Dokken. So probably the easiest thing to do at this point is to kind of let's go through what they did. So Don Dokken made this album up from the ashes. Basically, he couldn't call the band Dokken because the other members wouldn't let him. So it is like a different lineup of Dokken, really. It's a phenomenal crack squad, this. On drums, Mickey D from Motorhead and the Scorpions and King Diamond. On bass, Peter Boltz from Accept. On guitar, John Norum from Europe. And on guitar, a guy you won't know much about, a guy called Billy White from Watchtower. In actual fact, Billy White does most of the solos on this album, and they're phenomenal. And John Norum is awesome on this. The solos, every solo is an event virtual on this album. There's some fantastic guitar playing. It's great melodies by Don. I think it's a really strong record. 8 out of 10. Production's not as good as the other Dokken albums, but it does sound good. The musicians are so good. Produced by Don and a guy called Wyn Davis. Thoroughly recommend Up From the Ashes. Check it out. It's really good. This point, George Lynch forms Lynch Mob, makes another classic of LA metal, 1990s wicked sensation. Works with a singer called Oni Logan. This album's got 12 tracks on. I think at this point, the problem with a lot of albums is they're getting 12, 13, 11 tracks on. If a band's just stick to 9 or 10 tracks, you'll have more consistency, in my opinion. But that's the CD era. But all the tracks are great on this. There's maybe a couple, Through These Eyes, No Bed of Roses I'm not as keen on. But side one of the album was very strong. George Lynch plays some immense solos on this. All I Want and For a Million Years would be the pick of the bunch. They're quite long solos. He really stretches out. I've got this remaster by Rock Candy a while ago. Great production and sleeve notes by Max Norman, who produced Loudness and Ozzy, Megadeth, great with guitars. But he actually flew in the demos, some demo vocals from Ollie Logan digitally. Now that's really easy to do now. So what they must have done, had a Fostex 4 track or something, some home recording thing, and somehow he's got the reel-to-reel, a cassette tape, and he's converted that into digital, and he's managed to sit it, and you can't spot where he's flowing in from the demo vocals. Really good. Great album. Then George follows it up with Lynch Mob's second album, just called Lynch Mob. Doesn't get as much love, this, but I think it's nearly as good. Great production by Keith Olsen, brilliant vocals by Robert Mason, the owner from Warrant. Really good 10 tracks on this album. I really like it. The solos probably aren't as awesome as what George has done before. They do a really good cover of Tie Him Over Down, actually. Heaven Is Waiting, that's a great track. No Good, Tangle in Your Web, When Darkness Calls. It's a really good record, and I just, pretty much put it not very far behind Wicked Sensation. Then what happens, Don Dokken, Jeff Pilson, Mick Brown get a deal with Portrait Records via John Kolodner. They're working on the songs, and John Kolodner and Portrait want George Lynch back. So he comes in late to this, and they do a Reformation record, Dysfunctional. I'll just say that this album sold 450,000 back in America in the day, and that wasn't considered enough at the time, and they got dropped. If you can sell 450,000 albums worldwide now, you are, you're achieving things that most bands just don't achieve. Sales are so low, and that includes with all your streaming. So basically, they were taking a leaf from what happened in 90s music, but I think they do a really good job here. They don't sell themselves out. They have some drop D tunings. They have a bit more vocal harmonies, the King's X thing, Alice in Chains thing. I think this is a really good album. You've got Inside Looking Out, Hole in My Head, which is great. The Maze, very good track. Too High to Fly, that's sort of Doors-ish, the vocal, it's pretty cool. Nothing Left to Say, which is an acoustic ballad, which is good. Shadows of Life, that's a good one. Long Way From Home, Sweet Chains, that's another sort of slightly psychedelic acoustic one with a nice Lynch swirly solo. Lesser of Two Evils, great chorus on that, great Jeff Pilson backing vocals. Then you've got What Price, that's got another kind of Doors influence on Don's vocals in the middle. Then it finishes with a cover of From the Beginning by Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and that's really, really good, really effective. So George Lynch didn't write many of the stuff on this because he came in later. His playing's really good. It's still, I would say this is his last sort of statement of the 90s. Like I say, sadly, things fell apart. They did an acoustic thing as well, when they played live in Japan, a sort of unplugged thing, which was good. It's definitely 7 to an 8 out of 10. That it's another good and interesting album that sits well with the times. So then that carries on. George Lynch, they do another album with George Lynch called Shadow Life. And what happens is basically they do go sort of grunge 90s on that, but by then it's 1997. I think George Lynch said he kind of wanted to finish Dokken, so he deliberately pushed it that way. I've listened to it a couple of times online, but the production's bad. It's poor. The packaging was horrible. I've never bothered with the album. Okay, so what I'll do now is I'll just switch off and we'll change to part 2.